Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
Time to check the polls, and we begin with the debate over whether gyms are going the way of blockbuster video stores.
Because some people say gyms are quickly becoming a thing of the past. And since the pandemic, about 9,000 fitness centers have closed. Americans got used to working out at home during the pandemic and bought lots of fancy equipment like Peloton bikes.
Experts say as the technology improves, even more people will be working out at home. Next, China's wandering elephants are finally heading home.
The year-long journey of 14 wild elephants appears to be nearing an end after they crossed over a river that will lead them closer to their natural habitat. Now, it's unclear why the elephants left the nature reserve to roam some 300 miles, entering several villages.
For months, authorities have been using food to lure the elephants in the right direction.
And next, the video game that a suburban dad would love.
Get your lawn mowing fix without ever leaving your living room. Check out the Lawn Mowing Simulator. It allows you to ride your favorite Toro or Skag across the countryside. There's even a career mode where you can start your own lawn mowing business.
The cutting-edge game is being released this week. And finally, an all-American snack for a first-of-its-kind baseball game.
The Yankees
go ahead and grab each other while I get ready for work.
Used in the movie Field of Dreams, and Chef Guy Fieri has created a special dish for the occasion. Get this, the apple pie hot dog.
It is a hot dog with apple pie filling in a crust with special mustard and spice. Yummy.
Play mom.
Admit it, these days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
But to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live. It's all about you.
Good morning, good morning.
We have made it through another week together.
We tell all our patients how much they love to hold their hands.
David, we're showing our love and support for all the ICU staff.
They're the heroes in this.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. Good Morning America, #1 in the morning, 9 years running. World News Tonight with David Moore, #1 in the evening with America's most watched newscast, 2020. The #1 news magazine on Friday nights. The View, the #1 daytime talk show. And ABC News Live, #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news. This is what News Live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
We're surrounded by people listening to the talk show.
Afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live reports. This is the moment. Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
I just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Checking the top stories, the surge in COVID cases among children has one top medical group calling on the FDA to authorize vaccines for young kids as soon as possible. Meanwhile, health officials across the South are issuing dire warnings. One says the surge in COVID cases is creating the most challenging conditions of the pandemic so far.
The Senate appears to be just hours away from passing President Biden's $1 trillion infrastructure package. In a rare bipartisan moment, about 70 senators are expected to vote in favor of the bill, which will cover roads, bridges, and other physical infrastructure.
Real estate heir and accused killer Robert Durst took the stand to deny murdering his friend Susan Berman. Prosecutors say the 78-year-old killed Berman in 2000 to cover up his wife's disappearance.
Today's weather, wildfire smoke still affecting air quality across the West. Monsoon storms in the Southwest, hot in the plains, and rain at times for most of the east.
And finally, it's called a pitch invasion.
That's the soccer term for a fan running onto the field in Logan's now with the youngest one ever.
As any Ted Lasso fan knows, but take a look at the bottom left
left-hand side of your screen. That's not Danny Rojas. It's the 2-year-old superfan crashing the pitch. And that's his mom, hot on his heels. This video racking up nearly 8 million views since it was posted just 2 days ago. Morgan Tucker says her son Zadok was enjoying the FC Cincy game in Ohio against Orlando.
I mean, he was just hanging out with us, eating some popcorn, enjoying it.
Until about 70 minutes in, Zadok wasn't thrilled when gameplay switched to the far end of the field.
So he went under the gate. And I was like, oh my God, I tried to grab his shirt and I missed. So then I had to hop over the gate and my instinct was just to run out there and get him.
Photojournalist Sam Green capturing Zadok's big breakaway on camera. The 2-year-old grinning ear to ear even after mom caught up with him.
He was just laughing the whole time.
What was going through your mind?
Honestly, the adrenaline was so much, I don't even remember. I had to ask my friend when I got back to the seat, I was like, did I go under the gate too? And she was like, no, you hurdled it. And I was like, oh.
Zadok and mom making it back to their seats to enjoy the rest of the game. So what's next for Zadok?
So he can start playing soccer when he's 3. So we have already talked about
The only player in his league that has experience on an MLS actual field.
Oh, for sure, for sure. He is coming with talent.
Morgan says she can't wait till Zadok's a little older and can truly appreciate this crazy story. For now, the little guy is thrilled that he was given the game ball after his stellar performance on the field. Andrew and Mona.
Kids tell you at a very young age with their personalities and clearly with their talent side.
A whole new meaning to kicking and screaming.
Tuesday, August 10th. Infrastructure's long journey in the Senate approaches the off-ramp. We start here. A $1 trillion plan to rebuild roads and bridges is on track for a rare bipartisan win in the Senate.
She's going to hold on to that bipartisan bill until she can get that bigger bill in her hands.
But plenty of potholes still lie ahead for Democrats. We'll break it down. Will full FDA approval of COVID vaccines convince more Americans to get their shots?
It's not the right of every American to catch and transmit a potentially fatal infection to other people.
One member of the government's advisory committee on vaccines isn't convinced.
My iodine is on fire.
And residents are calling it apocalyptic.
In some cases, those roads were the only way out.
We take you on the ground to the massive wildfires in Greece. From ABC News, this is Start Here. I'm Elizabeth Schulze. Hey, good morning. Brad is off today. I'm going to be taking you through the news, starting with what we can only hope will be the final Senate vote this morning on the long-awaited bipartisan infrastructure bill.
It may have taken all weekend, but the Senate is now finally on the precipice of passing major bipartisan infrastructure legislation.
It feels like we've been talking about this bill and this vote for weeks, months, I don't know, even years. We have been. But the Senate appears to have reached an agreement on this roughly $1 trillion plan. It's on that hard infrastructure, so roads, bridges, rails, and broadband internet. So let's have our one and only ABC's Trish Turner walk us through this. She is on Capitol Hill. Trish, what can we expect to see this morning in the Senate?
Well, you're right. We are finally here after a very rough, long slog. And it looks like later this morning, the Senate's going to pass this $1.1 trillion package. There's $550 billion in new spending on all of the things that you said, and it includes money for Amtrak, for high-speed internet.
As we did with the Transcontinental Railroad and the interstate highway system, will soon once again transform America and propel us into the future.
We expect overwhelming bipartisan support. That is a huge win in and of itself. You know, symbolically for President Biden, who ran on a pledge to be more bipartisan.
It's a bill that would end years of gridlock in Washington and create millions of good-paying jobs.
But I will say it's got a long way to go in the House, where progressives say it's just not big enough.
Right, so that's obviously my next question. Assuming this passes, then what? Then what happens next in the House?
What the Senate leadership and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and the White House, they've all concocted this two-track, system or strategy.
I laid out two clear goals for this summer work period. Pass the bipartisan bill and a budget resolution to set up the second track of our process.
So the bipartisan bill is on the one track, and the other has a much larger budget bill. It's not, bipartisan at all. It's $3.5 trillion.
We're going to do it all without raising a cent from earners below $400,000.
Republican friends say we're going to be raising taxes. Well, you're right. Yeah. But we're going to be raising taxes on the wealthiest people in this country.
It contains lots of things in the Democratic agenda, like an expansion of Medicaid to cover dental and hearing aids,
including universal pre-K, funding for free community college, as well as money to combat climate change.
We expect a pathway to citizenship to be created for dreamers, for farm workers. So it's all of their priorities, and that's on the second track.
Whatever you can achieve in a bipartisan way, bravo.
And what Speaker Pelosi, she knows that the progressives are really restive at the idea that this $1 trillion plan, might get stuffed down their throats because it's really popular now.
But at the same time, we're not going forward with leaving people behind.
There's a lot of pressure for them to get that $1 trillion bipartisan plan passed, but Speaker Pelosi knows her caucus well. She's going to hold on to that bipartisan bill. She wants to see the Senate Democrats, they have to totally unite. It's really difficult around this $3.5 trillion bill, produce a product later this fall and get it over to the House. So she's going to hold on to the bipartisan bill until she can get that bigger bill in her hands, and then she's going to pass both of them together on the House floor.
We have to go into the future, we build back better, to build not only the physical infrastructure, but the personal infrastructure.
So it's a big deal for her. It might be the only way she keeps her caucus united because she's holding on to a pretty razor-thin majority over there as well.
Okay, so what you're saying is the House could be holding on to this bipartisan infrastructure bill for a while, like weeks even, after it passes, until it's clear that this second track, the $3.5 trillion budget blueprint, gets those 51 votes that it needs to pass in the Senate. And I'm assuming since this blueprint is packed with Democratic priorities you just mentioned, no Republicans are going to be voting for this.
Yeah, not one Republican vote for this. This is going to be one of the signature campaign battles in the 2022 midterms.
Last election cycle, Americans elected a 50-50 Senate, a closely divided House, and a president who promised unity and moderation.
I can't tell you how many times we have heard, Republicans use the phrase, reckless tax and spend policies of Democrats. That's what they branded this, and they're going to hang it around the necks of Democrats all the way into the midterms. Republicans are feeling really bullish about their chances of retaking the House, even potentially the Senate.
I thought middle-class families were supposed to be delighted with their socialist shopping list.
So not one Republican vote for this package, but I'll tell you what, one thing in the Senate that's going to be difficult.
The Democratic budget will be the most significant legislation for American families since the era of the New Deal and the Great Society.
So they put out this budget blueprint first, and then all of the committees have to take this blueprint and they have to fill it in with policy. And they'll do that over the August recess into September, roughly a September 15th timeline for getting all that work done. That's a really tall order. But, they've got to then make it past the rule keeper in the Senate. Senate parliamentarian, she has a lot of power here to tell them what's okay in this budget process that they're using, this fast-track way of getting things done with just 51 votes. So they've got a lot of hurdles to get over and then get it over to the House and hope really that both of these bills, the bipartisan bill and the $3.5 trillion bill, they have to hope that the House doesn't make any changes because coming back through the Senate with either of these bills would just be a nightmare scenario.
Infrastructure Week definitely still not over here yet. Got some months ahead still. Trish Turner, thank you so much for explaining it as always.
Thanks so much.
Next up on Start Here, full FDA approval of COVID vaccines is coming soon. Will it convince the tens of millions of Americans who are still unvaccinated to get their shots? That's after the break.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
What will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do? I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're going to move it. Let's move it. We're surrounded by
squeezing into this onset.
We're on urgent delivery level.
Be afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us. Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
Good morning.
What is it that you really want to know? Need to know?
Make sure you are grabbing each other, guys.
But to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live. It's all about you.
Assault on the Capitol, the ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu, now streaming. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than anyplace else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Moore, America's #1 most watched newscast, now streaming on ABC News Live.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America. ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
About 30% of the U.S. population eligible to get a COVID vaccine still hasn't gotten one.
I believe I'm a healthy, strong person. It's relatively new. I'm in general skeptical about what I want to put in my body.
And there's this common idea that one of the biggest barriers holding back more Americans from getting vaccinated is that the vaccines aren't yet fully approved by the FDA.
A certain percentage have said when the vaccines get the full approval of the FDA, I would feel more comfortable in doing that.
And the thinking goes that once the vaccines are fully approved versus being authorized under emergency use like they currently are, more Americans will be convinced they're safe. So who better to ask about this than Dr. Paul Offit? He's director of the Vaccine Education Center at Children's Hospital Philadelphia and is also a member of the FDA Advisory Committee on Vaccines. So Dr. Offit, I know you can't talk about the exact timing here, given your role at the FDA, but help us walk through the process to get a vaccine like Pfizer's fully approved, which we understand could just be weeks away.
So what does emergency use authorization mean? It means that a company is allowed to distribute an investigation new drug. That's what it is. This is far from an investigation new drug. I mean, this vaccine has been given to half of the people in this country. It has an enormous safety profile, an enormous efficacy profile. We know a lot about this vaccine, frankly, much more than many other licensed products out there.
This is the largest real-world study in the U.S. 500,000 healthcare workers involved, and it confirmed what we saw in earlier findings, that the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines are 94% effective at preventing symptomatic illness after 2 doses.
So I think that what gets this from emergency use authorization to full approval or licensure is 6 total months of efficacy data, which is going to look good.
And for the few vaccinated people who got COVID, their illness was shorter, milder, and less likely to spread to others.
And then what the FDA does when they license a product is they don't just license the product, they also license the processing, they license the manufacturing side, which means validating all the protocols regarding manufacturing. That's what that means. Typically that takes about a year. I was part of the team at Children's Hospital Philadelphia that created the rotavirus vaccine, and that validation process took a year. But I think from the standpoint of the consumer, there really is no difference. I think if people are looking at this and thinking, well, it's really not until it's a fully approved product that I know it's not experimental, that's a little silly, because right now we have all the evidence, and it's far from experimental, and it's really more of a psychological political issue than anything else. I think it will help with mandates. I think there are some groups that are just waiting until this is fully licensed before they are willing to mandate it. Hopefully this all happens by mid-September. That's my understanding.
So basically, anyone holding out for full approval because they think it's going to be safer for them to take that, there's not a lot of merit there.
No, and nor do I think it necessarily is going to convince people. I think some people are just using this as kind of a straw man argument for why they don't want to get it. And then when it's fully approved, they'll come up with another argument.
Well, yeah, so that brings us to the mandates. We're already seeing this shift in vaccinations, kind of moving from the carrot to the stick approach here. The Pentagon announced yesterday that vaccines will be mandatory for all military service members by mid-September. So is your expectation that more private companies, that they're going to start mandating vaccines once this gets full approval?
Well, certainly you don't need to have full approval in order to mandate. I mean, the University of Pennsylvania healthcare system has mandated this vaccine for many weeks. Children's Hospital Philadelphia is doing the same thing.
I've seen some reporting out there that means that all the troops have to be vaccinated by mid-September. That's not accurate. They make the request by mid-September. Unless or until FDA licensure occurs before.
Good morning. Good morning.
I'm glad that the federal government is moving forward to mandate this vaccine for the military, as they mandate a number of vaccines. So this is nothing novel. Certainly, if you're going to pick any vaccine that you would mandate, it would be this one.
You can consider this memo today as what we would call in the military a warning order. A warning order to the force that this is coming, and we want you to be ready for it as well. And obviously, we prefer that that you get the vaccine now and not wait for the mandate.
This is where I think the rubber is going to meet the road for the next 6 months. And you have a solid 60, 70, 80 million Americans who are telling you they don't want to get vaccinated, period. That they're going to still allow themselves to be fertile ground for this virus to cause harm, for this virus to mutate, to maybe create variants that are even more resistant to vaccination. And what do? I mean, the government can either stand back and say, okay, sure, we'll let that happen, or the private sector can step forward, and I think they're doing that, and saying this is not okay.
Is it frustrating to you as someone who's kind of seen this process, knows this data in and out, that people are not yet convinced to get these vaccines?
Yeah, I was wrong about this. I thought that given the nature of this pandemic, which has brought us to our knees, when people saw this as their ticket out of this mess, that they would readily embrace it, but they haven't.
The needles are ready, and so is the Charlton athletic team lining up for inoculation against polio.
I'm a child of the 1950s. I experienced polio. I certainly remember that my parents would not let me swim in a public pool then.
It's wise indeed to take the precaution. Just a quick jab in the arm, that's all.
And poliovirus was the enemy. And when that vaccine was created, it was warmly embraced, roundly embraced, and we eliminated polio from this country.
Hardly felt a thing. Nothing to it, really.
Polio had no friends.
Is it really comfortable? Is it really healthy for them to be muzzled and have their breathing obstructed all day long in school? I don't think it is. And
SARS-CoV-2, on the other hand, has a great many friends. I mean, you can list the governors that prohibit mask mandates or prohibit vaccine mandates, conspiracy theorists, science denialists, vaccine denialists. Sort of, it's hard to watch.
I don't plan on getting it. I don't want it. So for him to tell me that I have to get it in order for me to not violate my probation is crazy.
That's why this is so much more of a difficult war to win, because the war isn't just against the virus. It's also in part against ourselves.
And may justify then some of these kind of stricter approaches to get people to get down and get their shots.
That's right. If people say to you, I'm not going to get vaccinated, it's a personal choice when it's not a personal choice. It's not the right of every American to catch and transmit a potentially fatal infection to other people. It's a choice that affects everybody. Therefore, I think sometimes you have to compel people to do the right thing.
And we're now seeing this push from the American Academy of Pediatrics for the FDA to authorize the vaccines for kids, ages 5 to 11 especially, after it said there were about 94,000 new COVID cases among kids just in the last week. Dr. Paul Offit, thanks so much for walking us through all of this.
My pleasure.
Yesterday, we told you about a landmark report from the United Nations. It gave us a sobering warning about how humans are contributing to climate change.
We can see the impacts of climate change playing out now in real time on
on our television screens.
And it made a call to action, basically saying this is a code red for humanity.
Dangerous climate change has arrived, and at this point it's a question of how bad we're willing to let it get.
Well, we're seeing the devastating effects of warming temperatures play out with major wildfires in California.
More than 620 buildings destroyed, 13,000 more at risk. At least 5 people are unaccounted for.
It just blew up. And there was a firestorm out of this world.
Then also in Greece, where a massive fire is tearing across the country's second biggest island. So let's take you there now with ABC's Inez de la Patera, who's been on the ground in Greece for almost a week now. Inez, where are you exactly? And tell us what you're seeing.
Hey, Elizabeth. Yeah, we actually just left the island of Evia, but we were there for several days, and we were on the north shore of Evia, which is one of the hardest hit areas here. And the scene on the ground was apocalyptic. The sky was yellow, everything was covered in a really strange kind of haze. So I think the best way I could describe it is it felt as if you had sunglasses on, except you didn't.
You see those flames right there, this whole area covered in smoke.
There was ash just constantly falling from the sky, obviously lots of smoke as well, and we had our N95s, thankfully.
Good morning, guys. Make sure you're grabbing each other, make friends.
Firefighters on that island kind of rushing from blaze to blaze. They were really struggling with the strong winds there, so the wind's constantly changing direction, and that's what made it so difficult for them, because as the wind's changing directions, it's also constantly reigniting fires that they thought they had under control.
Here in Greece, firefighters still battling the flames from the sky. That hillside completely burned.
We saw them at times kind of abandoning these fires, fires that were kind of closing in on some homes. We saw elderly residents being carried to safety, carried onto ferries.
Thousands of people rushed to evacuate in the middle of the night by ferries, private boats, any way they could.
In some cases, fires had kind of cut off all other access routes to certain villages, and so the only way for residents to get to safety was on those boats.
My island is on fire.
We were actually stranded on Evia. Fires started closing in on the village we were in, and the roads got blocked off. We were told to get to the beach. The police were going around with a bullhorn telling people to get to the beach, and the plan was, if the fire had closed in on the village, then people would have evacuated on the last ferry that was left. So we spent, 4 to 5 hours there, kind of just waiting for the fires to subside. And it was a really tense, atmosphere. There's nothing you can do but wait. But they have, evacuated thousands by now. I believe the latest figure was over 2,000 people who have been evacuated from the island of Evia because of these fires.
And that's how unusual is this in Greece? Obviously here in the U.S., unfortunately, we've gotten kind of used to the wildfire season at this time of year, but this feels different in Greece. Is that the case?
Yeah, and I mean, that's what residents have told us. We've, gone around speaking to residents first in the suburbs of Athens, but on the island of Evia as well. I've asked residents over and over again, what do you make of this? Is this something you've seen before? And I've been told over and over again, the answer is we've seen wildfires before, but nothing like this.
The fire likely fueled by bone-dry conditions, just days after the country's worst heat wave in 3 decades.
Temperatures at one point last week hit 113 degrees, so residents saying that's unusual. It does get really hot in Greece, but not to that extent.
And that's the case not just in Greece, but across the Mediterranean region. We're seeing that in Turkey, Italy, Albania.
The reason that heat is to blame here is because the heat is making for these really dry conditions that are causing the fires to break out and then spread because the grass, the trees are so dry.
And has the Greek government kind of gone as far as to link what's happening there to climate change?
Yes, the Greek Prime Minister actually did make the link. He spoke to residents in a televised address, and he said these were unprecedented conditions. He called the country a powder keg because of the heat wave and these really dry conditions. He's promising to kind of rebuild and replant
for those
trees
that are watching
will
right
be
now.
more
Have a
resistant
wonderful
to fire.
Tuesday. I have to
Residents have been
disconnect.
very frustrated with the government.
I will be back tomorrow morning, and I'm going to be doing another live for several hours on Friday night. So if you guys want to join me to grow, come join me. Click on that notification bell so you know when I'm live.
Firefighters, planes, helicopters. So
Kisses
that
to
will
everyone,
hopefully in the coming days
and I will see you
help
tomorrow.
Greece get these fires under
Bye.
control. Thanks so much, Inez, for bringing this caller from the